In this video, we're going to be meeting with Dave Williams, talking about inspirational leadership, how doing the things we do for the right reasons and really impacting to change people's lives is paramount, especially right now in the mortgage industry. Let's get started.
Perfect doesn't exist. The pursuit of better is how we should live.
Dave, how do you have the unfortunate pleasure of knowing this guy?
I have known Eric, God, I don't even know for how long.
It was probably around the time you started traveling to Texas every week.
Yeah.
So how many years ago was that?
That was 2010.
There you go. So 11 years ago.
Yeah. Okay. So Eric is the only recruiting guy that I'll pick up a call from.
There you go. Well, I hope to be your second.
So if you want to know if you hired the right person, you did.
There you go. Okay. All right. They made a good choice.
Because he's genuine. I don't think of him as a recruiter. I think of him as a friend. And
nice. Okay, cool.
So that's a great space to be in together.
100%. Well, yeah.
Well, the feeling's mutual, Dave. I appreciate it.
So we're just going to have a very open, fluid conversation. I like the way Eric said it before. Anybody who gives a shit about being a good person should hear.
Right.
That's what this is about. So maybe I include this. Eric, should I include this?
What?
Is this going to make the cut into the?
Sure. Absolutely.
Maybe.
All right. I got Dave's.
Well,
Being real.
Well, it was funny because he's like, hey, who's? I guess it was Rene Rodriguez, right? We're trying. He was asking who our target audience was, and
yes.
Tom asked me, "Hey, who's our target audience?" I'm like, anybody that gives a shit about being a good person.
I wrote it down. I wrote it down. I was like mortgage professionals / in quotes anybody who gives a shit about being a good person.
Oh, that's perfect.
Dash Eric Petersen. I was like, it was him, not me. So Rene, if you don't like it, then
he gets it.
But if you like it, you also get credit for that too.
There you go.
Well, so Dave, what I was looking at when Tom approached me about doing this, we always talk about like the business side of it, right? And we can have that conversation anytime,
right?
And we can sit here and have a conversation about rates and inventory, margin compression, you name it, the differences between companies. But the funny part about it is when you think about it is, even if, let's just say there was a great company that existed out there, and from the leadership at the very, very top, but your branch in particular was awful, right? I mean, and we've all seen it. We've seen good companies with a few bad people, and so
sure.
So even though they want to be there, they're not there, right?
Right.
So kind of the gearing for this was more about what are these characteristics that people have aside from the we talked about companies looking at people on paper. This is what they look like, and they don't get to know them before they try and recruit them, right?
Right.
So what if we said, hey, companies are who they are, right? Just based on the basic structure and design that leadership decides this is where we're going to invest and this is where we're going to is going to be the direction of the market. And so what I like to have in these conversations is, what are those other characteristics of the people that actually are the driving force behind the people that you want to work with? What are those things that make you like excited to come to work with? And look, I will tell you, and this, there's no need for me to ever kiss up to anybody, but I will tell you, and I've told you this all the time, just on one-on-one calls, so it's true.
Right.
Just like you've always been that guy that is continually looking for ways to inspire people, right? And you've probably seen the fruits of that labor and stuff like that. But that's really what I wanted to dive into with you, is just more about why you think that's so important, and the feedback you've had from the impact on what that creates for people.
Well, and I think, mortgage banking is what I do for a living, but it's not what I want to do for my life. And it's not the impact I want to do. So I greatly love helping people, with home ownership, and I'm very creative and I can put deals together. That's a given, I think, for any good LO. But for me, I want to make a difference in the world every day. And so I wake up every day, part of my, routine for habit or whatever you want to call it, is my social media presence, which you know it, and I've met tons of people from it, but it actually started probably 10 years ago with a friend of mine who just started doing motivational quotes. And, he's one of the first ones to do it. And I kind of liked it. And I said, that's kind of cool. And I was looking forward to it. And I said, I'm going to start doing that. Like, I was just kind of playing around with social media at the time. And so I started doing that. And then Cindy Ertman, who's one of my coaches, I have three just because I need a lot of help. But Cindy said, Dave, why don't you just put a little something, just a phrase or something on top of it. Don't just do a quote. You just add something to it, just something personal, from you. And it's just a line or two. And so I started doing it, and it's been interesting. It's very intentional for me. I don't just go, oh, let's go post it. I really, when I sit down to do a post, I just, kind of almost get in a meditative state, go, what is the message that needs to be today? Because somebody's going to hear something from me today that's going to make a difference in their life. And so it's kind of ironic. Like there's times I think I know what it is and I'll go to post it and I can't post it. Like I'm supposed to be in this nice, relaxed state. I'm getting pissed because I can't post it. And all of a sudden I realize that's not the message. Right. And I got to go, okay, I got to go back in. Somebody else has got to hear something different. And so I'll go back in. And I have a lot of different quotes that are there that I can pull from. And then inevitably that's where somebody will reach out to me and say, hey, thank you. I needed that today. And so that's kind of what really I'm known for. I do mortgages, but that my personal page is all about inspiration, motivation. What can I do to make a difference in the world today? And that's opened up the door for me to meet a ton of great people in my life that are, from a leadership role, because I think it just makes you authentic and real because you care about people and you want to help them.
You know what? I think that's more and more of a lost art. I will tell you, it's so funny to see how people's words don't always match up with their actions. Every time I'm usually having a conversation with somebody on the phone, there's usually a story in my head that I'm replaying as I'm having that conversation. For example, there was somebody, and this was most recent, that put a post on a welcome that I put up there that was completely inappropriate, right? And I was kind of shocked that somebody who was supposed to be a leader in this business, instead of congratulating somebody for deciding to take a chance and make a change, instead it was like, literally out there on a post like, why wouldn't you come here, and next time you move you gotta, that kind of stuff, right?
Yeah, right.
And the funny thing is, as I look at his profile and the things that he posts, it's about, caring about people and showing them that, you're there to support them and stuff like that. And so their words don't always match their actions sometimes. And, you always give a little bit of grace because sometimes we do things based on a little bit of an emotion, right?
Right.
But my bigger overall perspective is that I try and be pretty intentional when I post. Sometimes I'll post about something that's going on in my head at the day. Like I won't go to a website and say, here's a post that I just happen to see that means something to me. It's usually, and you may have seen this based on the text that I sent you the other day, right? Is it's either specifically about something or someone that's happening at that time. Every once in a while they're about me. Like, obviously the one I posted this morning was just about, something that was given to me that meant a lot to me. But most of the time it's about somebody else. And so they're not, I'm sure that you do that too, but on the post that I put, it's literally about something somebody else is going through, an experience we had together, or something like that. And I will usually text that person and say, hey man, that post from this morning was for you.
Right.
Yeah. It really quickly, something that, I've heard a few people echo is a lot of people, to your point, right? Like leadership when times are good, like that's kind of easy, right? Like it's kind of a layup, right? Because when times are good, it's really easy to lead. It's when things are really hard, right? Like when somebody resigns from your company, right? When somebody you've been talking to for a while joins another company, right? Like that is what you do during those times. That's true leadership, right?
Right.
And I think it's really unfortunate that the mortgage industry has become a place, not to say exclusively, but there's a lot of people out there who, again, to kind of what we shared earlier, right? Like if there's a line in the sand, how much is it about them and how much is it about you? Right. Like you have to walk what you talk. Right. And
I think, integrity, honor, trust, authenticity is important. Like, a lot of people want those traits, but their actions don't show that. And so when you live your life, I think with intentionality, you're always aware of your actions. And when you filter it through those words, And I think that makes you real and authentic, and then people and hence, trust you and, value what you have to say.
Here's a question. In your organization, or like in your, in the time that you've been in the mortgage industry, how have you really helped other people become stronger leaders in that point, right? In that sense where they can not just talk the talk, but actually walk the talk, right? How do you help people become more of that?
Well, personally, my style is getting to know them personally and what they're all about. I take that time to find out, who they are, what's important to them, and then where are they trying to go. And I think once you get to know them personally, we all have our agendas, right? If we see somebody like, oh, he'd be a rock star this, a rock star that, but that may be the farthest thing from him that he wants to do. And so I think when you really get to know somebody, a lot of times, people, just because I've been in the industry so long, will just reach out to me and say, hey, I'm dealing with this or dealing with that. Can I get some advice from you? And I think that's an honored space to be in because of my background, to where they're just authentic and say, hey, I'm thinking about doing this. What's your opinion? Do you think I'd be good at this? And then I think you just got to be really honest with the people once you get to know them. And you get to do that if you really, truly know who they are.
Yeah, the fact that people do that and they don't actually work at your company, right? The trust, right, that
Right.
you've built with those people. And to your point, walking that talk throughout their entire relationship with you, right? Despite whether or not that's at your company. So that speaks volumes.
Well, and you got to realize you always got to remember you're in a sacred space when people are trusting you with this information, like, and you can't use it to your advantage, right? Like, you just got to be your authentic self and know you're there, for them, not for anything about your self-interest. And I forget who said this, maybe you guys know, but said, if you help enough people get what they want, you're going to get what you want. And just, always, if you just make it about what can you do for the other person, how can you help them, how can you help develop them, all your things that you need, it all comes back.
I want to say it was Lou Holtz.
Is it? Okay.
Or it might be Zig Ziglar.
One of those guys,
It's gonna be one of those two guys.
I wish I owned it, but I don't.
Yeah.
But I truly believe that. It's never about the money. It's always about the person. It's always about trying to find out how can I help, whether it's them coming to work for me or, hey, God, I love you but here's going to be a better place because this is what you want to do. And here's the place you need to go do that in.
Mm-hmm. Well, I've one of the most recent quotes that I saw, and I talk about it quite often, and I don't remember where I saw it. Kind of the same thing was, success is about you, significance is about other people. And the funny part is, if you create significance, typically it translates back into success for you, right?
Correct.
And one of the interesting things about our business is that you also realize that people get more value out of whatever it is that they're struggling with, depending on their experience in life, right? So if your life has been pretty easy and you give somebody, something exciting, that gap isn't very, very big, right? But if somebody has had like the worst life ever and you inspire them to be, such an incredible person, I mean, that gap is huge, right? So the reason I'm even bringing that up is knowing how important it is and how effective inspiring people can be. Can you think of like one story? And you don't have to mention any names or places or anything like that if you don't want to, but just something where just being inspiring for somebody else created an absolute huge impact.
Yeah, I had one of my best friends tried to commit suicide and wasn't successful. And, I had to be there, while he was in the hospital, every day till he was in a coma, till he came out. And then being by his side, listening to him, trying to understand how he got from point A to point B. And, we're good friends to this day, but that for him, he says, I saved his life. I didn't save his life. I just was there for him. I showed up. I was there every day, holding his hand, just giving him love from my heart to say, you're going to make this right. And I think when you show up at those times, they're I mean, I don't care how much money you make. I don't care where you live. I don't care what you drive. At the end of the day, it's what impact have you had in somebody's life? And that's, for me, that's the most significant thing for my life is, I there's just a number of people that I've been able to make a huge difference in their life. But then I can go back and look at all the people, I can name their names of people that made an impact on me, that saw something in me that said, Dave, don't stay here. Like, you need to move on. Right. And I have a good friend that calls them angel runner guides. Like, we're all blessed to have those people in our lives that see something in us and keep moving us forward, see us in a better light. And so if we get to be one of those people in somebody else's life, I think that's one of the greatest gifts. There's no amount of money that you can make that provides that for that person.
Yeah. Wow.
Well, there's not enough of that, right? Because we seem to be in a very what's in it for me kind of environment.
Exactly.
Unfortunately. But the nice thing about being there for others is the fact that you never know, to your point, exactly what impact you've made. Sometimes you'll never know. I will tell you, just in the last month or two, I've been having some great conversations with people, and then having conversations just like this, and then sharing that story with that person that impacted them, and those conversations have been great, because a lot of times we don't get to hear those stories. But I think we spend so much time
focusing on what we want to say sometimes.
Exactly. Right. Yeah.
But being fake isn't the word I want to use. I really love it, like on LinkedIn, how everybody posts their 5-star reviews, right? And that's great. I mean, I'm happy for them, and I really want to see the 1-star ones though.
Right.
I'm just kind of curious, like what somebody's upset about, right? Not to your point against them, but but we spend so much time like on social media, Instagram, Facebook, on, hey, look how perfect our lives are, right? And so, much like people like Robin Williams, man. I mean, how many people saw that coming, right? So I think, we can do so much good just by trying to be obviously the best people that we can. And look, I throw it out there all the time, and I think I hope people will take me up on it. But I said, hey, look, anytime I can help, please let me know. I'd love to help.
Right. Well, I call it the ripple effect. The ripple effect is you never know what your one action is going to do and how far. So I tell people, it's an exercise I do with a lot of people that I do some coaching with, is, close your eyes and visualize a lake on top of a mountain. And, that lake is just, if you ever been up to a mountain where there's a lake and there's no wind, it's just glass, and the reflection, you can't tell where the mountain starts and the reflection starts, right? I don't know if you've ever seen any water that, but still. And you pick up a pebble and you throw it right into the middle of that lake, and it splashes. And then what happens? The ripples go on and on and on and on out to the shore, right? That's our lives. I mean, you don't know that one smile, that one person that you let in the lane. Like, we don't know just what our actions have on people's lives. And I think when you start living your life that way, that you're making an impact every day by every action, because that's going to ripple effects out into the universe. Yep. It's life-changing for you.
Yeah. My wife reminds me of stuff like that when somebody cuts me off. And she's like, maybe he's a doctor and he has to go rush to deliver a baby. Like, okay.
Right.
Yeah. Something that has stuck with me ever since I heard it, and I don't remember where this came from, maybe one of you guys will know, is people don't remember what you say. They remember how you make them feel.
Exactly.
Your story that you shared about your friend, right, who did try to commit suicide, right? Like, you just were there to listen, right?
Right.
And studies have actually shown that if you go to a random cocktail party, for example, right, a networking event, and you meet some people and you spent 99% of that time just listening to them talk, right? They just talked. And 1% of the time you talk, they walk away from that conversation feeling, wow, I really like that guy. I really like Tom. Like, that was a great conversation. It's crazy, right? Like, but it's
right. No, absolutely.
Yeah, that's innate human behavior. We want to feel heard.
Right.
And yeah, it does seem like, well, in our industry especially, but let's be honest, it's just in general, right?
Right.
People have that agenda, and it's so strong that they're willing to cross that line in the sand so that they feel good, so that they can feel good about themselves. Funny enough, actually downstairs right now, I have some recruits who are interviewing with our company, and some new friends. And I love that this came up so early. Like, we started to talk about the two things that we require, right, for somebody to be able to work here. Number one is you have to want to help us change the mortgage industry. Number two is you can't be an asshole. You'd be surprised how many people fail, right?
Right.
And we continue to talk about some other things, but then, I don't know if you've read The Infinite Game by Simon Sinek, Dave. It's like kind of like a Bible to me now. But
okay.
one of the things in that book is so powerful. You can't, like, if you want to do the right thing by that person, right? If you truly are pursuing the highest and best good for that person, then for my new friends downstairs, it's not a question of can we do this? Of course we can do this, right? Like, they can work here if they want to. Are they going to be better versions of themselves by choosing this partnership?
Right.
And I love that you shared that very vulnerable story. So thank you for that, because I think that it's important for more and more people to walk that walk, realize that, yes, we're all going to make a good living in the mortgage industry, but there's so much more we have to do. We have to help inspire people, lead them, create better versions of ourselves. And who you surround yourself with is so important nowadays. So.
No, absolutely.
And the reason I like having these conversations, Dave, too, is, especially around things like inspiration, is somebody told me about a place that they worked before, and they were telling me about the leader specifically. And, people pay attention to these podcasts, which we hope that they do. I hope in a future one, they'll be able to figure out who it was, because we're having that person on. But she actually told me that this individual had such a way of making everybody feel like somebody. And I thought that was such a powerful statement that as soon as we were done talking, I picked up the phone, I called that person. I'm like, hey, we're doing a podcast. Love to have you on around, maybe this subject. Like, what were the little things that you did that maybe you thought weren't a big deal? Because I would hear stories like, just leave a little post-it note saying, hi, have a great day, stuff like that, stopping by and getting to know like nobody was too important or not important enough. Right. So stuff like that. But, that to me is something that is a little bit lacking in our business. And, you listen to leadership talk about, I lead by telling people, hey, you gotta do this, you gotta do that. But that's only part of the equation, right? The rest is getting people excited to wake up and go do the same thing that they've been doing, every single day, and liking the people that they're surrounded with, and just feeling like that, that I don't even know what you call it, just that excitement of going, look, I want to show up and make a difference.
Yeah. To be inspired, to wake up inspired, feel safe, right? Where you work, right? Because there's a lot of things you need from a company, right? Compensation, right? We make our living doing this, benefits, right? But then even mentally, right? Like, what is the environment that those people wake up in every day, right? And then when you start to think about, I'm going to go to work, and who's there, and how am I going to feel, right? Then like, that's something that I wish more people would pay attention to who they're bringing in the door, honestly, right? Because when you bring more and more people in who dilute culture, right? And to me, culture isn't some cheesy overused word you get to just say you have, right? Like, culture is, what you're doing, why you're doing it, and who you're doing it with, right? It's at the heart of a group of people, an organization. And, I think we've talked about it a lot right now, right? Walking that talk. So.
No, absolutely.
Now I feel like Dave's interviewing us. Hey, so bring it back a little bit, Dave, is, look, if you wouldn't mind, because we'd love to have this in here too, is, kind of tell us about your journey, about how you even got in this business. Sounds like your mom pulled you in at some point when you were quite underage to be working.
Child labor.
All the way to today.
Yeah, so I got into the business right out of college. A company was doing owner carried paper, and they were going after entrepreneur type bankers that were frustrated with the banking industry. And so they were going to try a training program to where they bought someone right out of college and train them in the business, and I'd have to break the bad habits the other guys had from the bank. And so I was one of the very first trainees that they brought in. And I trained with a guy, just an amazing guy. And my training was literally sitting, our desk butted each other, and I listened to him talk every day. with clients. And so I was blessed. He was a relationship guy, and a numbers guy. And so he kind of taught me the business. And then I was young and cocky, and I had always kind of walked into offices, and I wanted to do something from scratch. And so the opportunity came with this company to come to Colorado and open up a branch for them from scratch. And so I came here and did that, and I'm still here. I got in, I was always a top producing loan officer at all the companies that I worked for. And then I got into management, full disclosure, totally selfishly. I became the branch manager so I could get my deals done faster. But as time went on, I'm very creative. I'm a MacGyver type, very analytical. I can take things apart that other people can't, and take a loan and then take it apart and put it back together and make deals happen. And so when I came to Colorado, that was my reputation. You can't get a deal done, call Dave, because he'll figure out how to do it. And from that, moving into leadership role at the branch, I was helping LO structure deals, and that led to our branch, becoming one of the biggest branches. And hence the owner of the company asked me to run sales for them, and kind of the rest is history. I say my one career mistake was I got off the street and became a management guy. But that opportunity has let me meet a ton of great people like yourself, Eric, and my Rolodex is full of people I've got to run around with that are significant people. Dave Savage, who you guys have done a podcast with, and so these are people that when you need help, you can call on, and these are, industry titans. And so I've been blessed enough to have those people in my life. And, I've come full circle to where I decided I was just traveling way too much. I've been at the top of the house, ran national production for a company, and decided I was done the traveling gig, and just talked to my wife and said, hey, I'm going to go back out in the street and originate loans. And after 18 years, I decided, okay, my last time I did a loan application, I hand wrote it. So, so I've been back at that for 4 years and just love it, because I'm back in my space that I love. Management is great because you get to help people grow and develop. But when you're on the front lines, you're building relationships with real estate agents, you're building relationships with buyers, helping them, achieve home ownership. And, one of the biggest joys is helping a first-time home buyer get into a house, right? And they're so thankful, that you helped them, and then they become your friends. I mean, my friends are either past clients or my real estate agents, they become my friends. You develop that kind of a deep relationship. So that's what's cool about, what I get to do.
That's awesome. I think that's always the end goal, right? Is for to feel like we've created value for somebody that they would even want to be our friends, right?
Right. Yeah.
I guess what the last question would be, or actually maybe two more. One of them would be like, just knowing how important, inspiring people is, and just kind of watch what it's done for the people that have ever looked to you to be that person for them. Like, if you have an audience and you were to say, this is why it's so important to inspire people, what would you say?
I'd say you're blessed if you get to make a difference in one person's life in a lifetime. If you get to do 2, 3, 4, that's awesome. And so I approach every day as, whose life am I going to make a difference in? Sometimes I hear about it, they'll call me, and let me know what that message in that day came. People will meet my wife, who happens to be a real estate agent, and just say, that she'll tell them who their husband is, and they'll say, oh, I love him. I love what he does every day. I look so forward to what he does, what he posts. And for me, that's, I'm bringing significance. That person's looking, what did I post for that day, whether they needed it or not need it. So I think significance is I'm very competitive, so I want to, be a top producer again. I'm working toward that goal, and that's important to me. But it's more important when I hear the difference I'm making in people's lives.
Who's someone that inspires you right now?
Probably the most inspirational person, and he's passed now, is my father. He taught me 2 things. He gave me a work ethic, and he taught me compassion for people. And I've never, I work my ass off. I'm blessed with that. I get that from my mom too, who's 86 and still sells real estate full time. but his compassion for people. My dad, he was a small town attorney, and he'd help you no matter what. If you couldn't pay him, it was okay. He was there, he'd help you. And when he passed away, his funeral was delayed 3 hours because of all the people that showed up to pay the respects. And they all shared stories about who he was. And then the second person's my son, because my son's taught me to be vulnerable at work. So my son is a manager for Discount Tire. And, I grew up, my dad was, one of the, tough, you toughen your son up, right? Don't cry. You're a tough guy. You shake hands, you don't hug. That's just his generation, right? And that's how I grew up. And my son, God bless his mom, who taught him this, he's just authentic. He cries. Like, he cries at work. Like, I had to learn that from him, to be vulnerable. And he's built this trust with these guys because he knows he's real. And so for me, I think that's, living from your heart. My dad lived from his heart, but he showed that by compassion with people. My son lives through his heart by being real and genuine. And so, I find, even if I'm talking to somebody and I get teary-eyed over it, I let the tears go. I don't have to be some tough guy, because a friend of mine told me, that's a spiritual psychologist, when you have tears, it's your heart talking. Listen.
Yeah, no, like that's great, man. I'll tell you, growing up, man, I was a robot.
Yeah.
I was an absolute robot. And, my wife, she just little by little, man, broke me down. She's like, hey, she always do this. She'd look at me, she's like, what are you thinking right now? I'm like, nothing. I mean, I'm literally thinking about nothing. And then like, hey, so how do you feel about, and she'd always want me to share my feelings. I'm like, why?
What's the point?
Yeah. No, I stuff these things down. I don't have to talk about any of this stuff. But you know what? I will tell you, a combination of being broken down by her for all those years, but especially after having kids, that all went right out the window. Right. So if you can bring that and have that experience before all that stuff, it really is impactful. It means a lot more to people.
All right, Dave, thank you so much for making the time to be here with us, to spend the time to show other people and share what inspirational leadership looks like to you. We really appreciate it. If you got something from this video, go ahead and comment, drop a comment above a future topic that you'd like maybe for us to cover. Eric, you got anything?
Yeah, and how about this? If you really like what Dave had to say and you want to see his inspirational quotes that he posts, he's on LinkedIn. Go find him.
Dave Williams. There you go. All right, guys. Take care.
Have a good one.